Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly, carefully into a world of shadows, soft footfalls and even softer regrets. Imagine this, you're lying awake in a dusty hayloft, the scent of animals and old straw clinging to your cloak, the weight of a dagger tucked awkwardly beneath your ribs. The air is cold. Your boots are still damp from the river crossing last night. Below you the innkeeper snorts in his sleep and turns over unaware of the guest he never knew he had. You're an assassin, sort of. Not the glamorous dagger-flipping type with leather armour and catchphrases. No, you're the medieval kind, the grim tired kind. The kind who hasn't bathed in weeks because a bath is a dead giveaway. The kind who hasn't been paid in 2 jobs and is still haunted by the sound of a goat bleating at the wrong moment. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me your location and local time. I always love seeing where and when people are listening. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie perfectly still in the loft. There's a knot in your shoulder from sleeping sideways on a rope. You've counted 6 rats. You've named 2 of them. One is eyeing your boot. You know you have to move soon, but not yet. You listen. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance. Faint voices begin to stir in the street below. A cart creaks by. The day is beginning, and that means you should be gone. Your mission today is, well, vague. The note said, observe. You're supposed to follow someone who might be someone doing something that might be suspicious. You weren't given much more than that. Typical. Your employer, who may or may not be an actual employer, is secretive to the point of ridiculous. You've only met once in a smoky tavern where he wore 3 cloaks and never blinked. He gave you a token shaped like a fish. You still don't know why. You roll to your side and feel the familiar ache in your ribs. That was from a tumble off a city wall last autumn. You were trying to escape a dog. It was a small dog, but extremely motivated. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins were truly organised professionals or just desperate freelancers with good balance. Based on your current situation, you lean toward the latter. You reach for your satchel, pull out a crust of bread and nibble. It's hard as stone. It tastes like sawdust and regret. Then you check your gear. Dagger dull, poison dried out, cloak still smells like onions and mould. Perfect. You slip down from the loft using the rafters like rungs. Quietly, slowly. A soft thump as your boots hit the packed dirt. You listen again. No movement. You edge through the barn past a drowsy cow who watches you with total apathy. You pause to pat her side. She doesn't respond. Fair. Outside, the morning is cold and wet. Mist curls along the ground like it's trying to remember where it belongs. You tug your hood low, adjust your belt, and disappear into the crowd. No one looks at you. That's the point. You pass a baker's stall and briefly contemplate stealing a roll. You don't. Too risky. You'd rather starve than get chased by another baker with a broom. It's happened before, twice. Instead, you keep moving. The person you're tailing, he's a merchant supposedly. Middle-aged, always wears green, likes pears. That's all you know. You see him. There. Across the square, handing coins to a flower seller. You lean against a wall, pretending to pick your nails. He moves off, and you follow. Slowly. Carefully. A little part of you wonders if he's even important. Maybe your contact got it wrong. Maybe you're just following a man who likes flowers. Wouldn't be the first time. Still you trail him through alleyways, past open shops, beneath drying laundry that slaps you in the face. You dodge a puddle. Fail. Your sock is wet now. Excellent. You keep going. The day stretches ahead like a street with no end. You've made it through the first morning. You're hungry, tired, and already rethinking every life choice that led you here. But you're alive. And that's something. You duck into the shadow of a crooked doorway as the man in green pauses to adjust something in his satchel. You pretend to admire a barrel. It is perhaps the least interesting barrel in the entire kingdom, but you look at it like it contains state secrets. That's part of the job confidence misdirection and occasionally lying to a barrel. He moves again. You exhale. You fall into step behind him once more, not too close, not too far. Just near enough to watch his shoulders, the bounce of his stride, the way he turns his head when someone laughs too loud behind him. He's cautious. Maybe too cautious. Your feet ache already. These boots were never meant for this much walking. They pinch your toes and rub the back of your heel raw. The left one has a split in the sole, and you can feel every pebble through it. You adjust your hood again. The air smells like horses' old turnips, and the kind of rain that never commits. Your breath fogs faintly. It's going to be a long day. You stop when he stops step sideways, when he checks over his shoulder. At one point he ducks into a small church and disappears through the side door. You sigh, mutter something vaguely impolite under your breath, and circle around the building to pick him up on the other side. He reappears 20 minutes later, with a new pouch tied to his belt. Could be coins, could be almonds. You've followed people for less. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins relied more on observation or instinct. Judging by your current process, it's about 70% instinct, 20% dumb luck, and 10% pretending you're not limping. You duck into an alley to tighten your belt again. It's fraying badly now, the leather stiff from water and time. You make a note to trade something for a new one, maybe that extra spoon you've been carrying. No one needs 2 spoons. You head back out and spot your target slipping into a side street. You follow. The street curves downhill toward the merchant quarter. Shops here are slightly fancier. Painted signs, flower boxes, goods displayed behind oiled cloth covers. You glance around quickly. No guards, no suspicious watchers, no geese. That last one is important. You once had a job go completely sideways because of one extremely loud goose. The man in green stops at a fruit stall and begins haggling over apples. You pretend to admire some onions and position yourself near a stack of baskets. He's speaking with the seller in low tones, but you catch a phrase. Shipment late again. Another delay. Dangerous. Interesting. He's handed a small scroll. He pockets it, doesn't even look at it, which means he either trusts the source or doesn't care what it says. Either way, you want to see it. He moves on. You wait, then slip behind him again. He winds through a narrow lane, then doubles back toward the tavern quarter. You follow from a distance now. The alleys are too tight, too easy to trap someone. You fall into a group of townsfolk heading the same way. Blend in. Smile politely. Step on no one's toes. Eventually the crowd thins and he veers left into a crumbling stone building with ivy climbing the walls. The shutters are closed. A small carved fish marks the doorframe. That again. You make a mental note and walk past, eyes ahead, counting steps until the corner. Then you duck down the next alley and circle back, trying to find a vantage point. There's a low wall nearby. You climb it, boots scraping stone, and perch carefully behind a chimney. The roof tiles shift under you. You peer down. He's seated inside with another figure, cloaked, gesturing slowly. You can't hear them, but the body language says tension. The kind of tension that precedes payment or betrayal. You shift, and the tile beneath your boot creaks. You freeze. Below someone looks up. Just a glance. You slide back behind the chimney and press yourself against the roof. You stay there, heart thudding quietly until the conversation resumes. That was close. You wait 10 more minutes, long enough for your knees to start mutinying. Then you slip back down the side of the building and blend once more into the crowd. You've lost him, for now, but you've learned enough. Something is happening. Something quiet but important. And you're in it now, whether you like it or not. You head toward the market, passing a juggler, a man selling boiled cabbage, and a child with a goat on a rope. The goat looks at you with recognition. You look away. It's only mid-morning. You've already trailed, climbed, eavesdropped, and mildly endangered your ankles. Now comes the part where you need to think, so you find the one place no one expects to find an assassin: a bakery. You sit on the stoop, nibbling the corner of a day-old roll, and watch the world pass by. You chew slowly. It tastes like flour dust and memory. You need to plan. You also need to stretch. But mostly you just need 5 minutes where no one is trying to stab higher or interrogate you. Just 5. You finish the roll. Or rather, you chew it into submission and swallow what feels like most of your dental enamel along with it. That's bakery bread when you're on the 3rd day, past fresh lesser meal, more a jaw workout. Still, you feel slightly better. A little food, a little rest, and no one's tried to arrest you in the last 5 minutes. By assassin standards, that's practically a vacation. The street is busy now, merchants hawking cloth a man, balancing far too many eels in one basket, and a juggler whose entire routine is just catching apples and taking bites out of them between throws. You watch him for a moment. He's got flair, you'll give him that, but you have a job to do. Kind of. The note was vague as usual. Follow the man in green, observe his movements, report any transactions of interest. No names, no timing, no exit strategy. You'd complain, but you're not exactly unionized. You sigh, stretch and stand. Your knees pop like distant drum beats. You adjust your cloak and head toward the tavern quarter. If he's still in town, that's where he'll be. It's where everyone goes eventually, merchants, messengers, and shady middlemen who need plausible deniability and a drink. The first tavern you check is the Weeping Pig. You've been here before. Once. You still have a bruise from the doorframe. It's lower than expected. This time you duck. Inside it's dim and smoky. The air smells like stale mead and wet socks. There's a bard in the corner plucking a lute and singing a song about someone named Maud who may or may not have been a goat. You don't ask. You scan the room. No green cloak. You sit anyway. The serving girl nods at you. You raise 2 fingers standard signal for just enough ale to warm the chest, but not enough to black out and wake up missing a boot. She brings you a cup and a suspicious look. You sip slowly. It's sour, but it's warm. You wrap your hands around the cup and settle into the corner. Across the room, a group of merchants argue over shipping routes. A cloaked figure haggles with a cook about stew. No one seems interested in you. Good. You listen, eyes half-lidded, doing what you do best, sitting very still and catching everything. Then something interesting happens. The door opens and someone slips in hooded quiet, carrying a bundle under one arm. They head straight to the back room. A few coins change hands. The barkeep nods and follows. You recognize that nod. It's the same one you used to see in the monastery kitchen, right before Brother Enoch passed someone a bottle of holy water that burned going down and made people confess everything. You stand stretch again and head outside. Time to find your contact, or handler, or employer. Titles are blurry in your line of work. You pass 2 more taverns before you reach the one that matters, the Fork and Flame. It's tucked behind a tannery half hidden by a leaning wall of firewood and the scent of damp leather. Inside it's quieter, better lit, and miraculously no one singing about goats. You spot him at the corner table, same as ever. Hood up, 3 cloaks, never blinking. You wonder if he sleeps with his eyes open or just hasn't slept in 20 years. You sit. He doesn't greet you, just slides a small token across the table. Fish-shaped again. This one has a mark on it, a scratch, almost a notch. You lift an eyebrow. Confirmed, he says, voice dry as bark. He passed a scroll. To who? He shrugs. We'll find out. Your job is to track it. You sip from a mug someone left at the table. It's cold, unpleasant, but it's something to do with your hands. He speaks again. You'll need to check the apothecary. The southern one, near the dye pits. You nod slowly. You'll find something, he adds. Or someone. Cryptic as always. You'd ask more questions, but it's no use. He's already gone. Literally. You look up, and he's vanished. You check under the table just in case. Nope. Still not a wizard. You sigh, and head out once more. The apothecary near the dye pits is a long walk, and not a pleasant one. The road takes you past fishmongers, tanners, and at least one man trying to sell slightly cursed-looking dolls from a blanket. You don't make eye contact. The air changes as you near the dye pits, sharper, more chemical. Your eyes sting slightly. The road narrows, the buildings lean, and the cobbles feel stickier. You find the shop. A crooked wooden sign swings overhead. Ointments, tonics, and other regrets. You snort softly. Inside it's dim but orderly. Shelves line the walls, filled with jars of strange powders, dried herbs, and one glass bottle that seems to hum if you look at it too long. The apothecary is a thin man, with ink on his fingers and a nose that could slice bread. He eyes you, headache, poison, indigestion. Or the kind of problem that screams when you open the closet. You blink. Poison, you say, carefully. The discreet kind. He nods slowly. Follow me. He leads you through a curtain made of hanging bones. Decorative bones, you hope, although one looks suspiciously like it could have come from a foot. You brush past them and enter the back room, which smells like dust vinegar and secrets that have been stewing too long. The space is narrow, with shelves packed from floor to ceiling. Bottles, bundles, and books crowd every surface. There's a stuffed weasel on a stool wearing what appears to be a hat. You try not to look at it. The apothecary gestures toward a workbench. Left side herbs, right side things you'll wish were herbs. You step cautiously closer. There's dried, belladonna powdered toadstool, crushed henbane, all the usual suspects. One jar is simply labelled no. You don't touch it. You reach for a tiny flask of something dark and iridescent. Careful, he says, without turning around. That one's polite, but only once. You nod, set it down. You select a few small vials, instead familiar things. Sleeping draught, bitter oil. Something that, when applied correctly, makes people forget the last 10 minutes of their lives. He watches you as you choose. No aconite. You shake your head. Too loud. He grins. You've been doing this a while. You shrug. He wraps your purchases in a cloth and hands them over. Don't die. You raise an eyebrow. Encouraging. Professional courtesy, he replies, already turning away. You exit through the front, adjusting the bundle under your cloak. The dye pits stink worse than you remembered. You hurry past boots squelching and head back toward the merchant quarter. On the way, you pass a trio of children playing a game that involves sticks shouting and extremely aggressive rules. One of them spots you, shouts thief for no reason, and continues running. You ignore it. The alleys twist around you, familiar now, like the folds of an old coat. You keep your hood low and your steps quiet. You have a few hours before dusk. Just enough time to test your tools. There's a courtyard you use, sometimes tucked behind a crumbling stable and a pile of discarded barrels. It's quiet, mostly dry. And the rats there have the decency to keep their distance. You arrive, scan the space, and step inside. You set your bundle down and draw your dagger. It's still chipped at the tip, but the balance is good. You run through the basic stance, posture footwork. You stretch your back and roll your shoulders. You try a few practice swings against a hay bale that's seen better days, your elbows still too high. You whirl around. A figure drops from the low wall behind you, landing with the soft thud of someone who knows how to fall. It's her, the thief. You met a few winters ago during a botched job involving a noble's chicken coop and 3 missing silver rings. You barely made it out. She did better. She always does. She grins. Still alive then. Debatable, you reply, lowering your dagger. She circles the courtyard, eyeing your stance. You move like you've been sleeping in barrels. I have been sleeping in barrels. That explains the smell. You smirk. What brings you? She shrugs. Heard someone matching your description was skulking around the dye pits. Thought it might be you. Thought you might need help. You hesitate. With what, looking less like you've been hit by your own plans. You sigh. That bad, she nods. Always. You go through the motions again. This time she corrects your footwork, taps your shoulder when you drop it, points out the tension in your wrists. You forget how helpful it is to train with someone who's not trying to kill you. Got any jobs lined up, she asks between drills. Maybe you grunt. Following someone, green cloak, merchant, possibly dangerous, possibly fond of pears. She raises an eyebrow. The pear guy? You know him, only that he tips badly and once tried to sell fake amber to a bishop. You nod. Sounds right. You spar for a few more minutes. It's not elegant. You both slip in the mud more than once. At one point your dagger hits the hay bale and bounces straight back into your shin. You try to pretend it didn't hurt. She sees through it instantly. Want to grab stew later, she offers. Can't. Watching the green man. She nods, then flips backward over the wall like a cat who moonlights as a gymnast. You're alone again. You sit on the hay, sweating, breathing hard. You pull out the flask of sleeping draught and roll it between your fingers. This you'll save for emergencies. You repack everything and head back toward the merchant quarter. The streets dimming slightly as the sun tips lower in the sky. Shadows stretch. You blend into them. You spot the man in green again near a tailor's shop, speaking with someone in a hood you don't recognize. They pass a coin pouch. No scroll this time, just silver. You note it, memorize their movements, then slowly, quietly, you retreat. You've got what you need. Now comes the hardest part, waiting. You wait. You wait like it's a profession, and in a way it is. If there's one skill every halfway decent assassin develops, it's the ability to linger in corners without looking like they're doing anything in particular. You've leaned against more damp walls and stared at more slightly broken carts than you care to count. Tonight, your post is an alcove behind a shrine to St. Cedric the mildly charitable. There's a rusted bell overhead and a small stack of votive candles melted into unrecognisable shapes. You light one partly to blend in, partly because the air has taken on that sharp, damp bite that warns of rain. The man in green is still across the square. He's talking now to a different figure, shorter, broader, definitely not local. You can tell by the boots. No one from around here owns leather that polished unless they've stolen it or killed someone for it. They don't exchange anything, just words, which somehow feels more important. You watch. Historians still argue whether assassins were part of larger networks or just lone figures drifting between taverns and shadows. Tonight, as you observe this little meeting of cloaks and confidence, you start to wonder if maybe it's both. The stranger leaves, first slipping into the alley that curves behind the old granary. You hesitate, then follow. You let the green cloak go. For now. You trail the stranger past shuttered windows and stacked crates. Their footsteps are heavy, deliberate, not someone used to running. Good. You don't want to chase anyone tonight. They stop suddenly. You stop too. They turn slightly as if listening. You press yourself against a wall and pretend to examine your boot. You hum a tune you just invented, trying to sound harmless. The stranger continues on. You exhale. The alley narrows into a crooked lane flanked by shops that smell like old onions and desperation. The stranger ducks into a doorway. A moment later, a light flickers inside. You find a stack of crates nearby and climb just high enough to peek through a cracked shutter. Inside, the stranger is unwrapping something cloth finely woven gold thread. A sigil, maybe. A seal. Hard to tell from this angle. A voice speaks another figure deeper in the shadows. You can't see them, but you hear enough to catch one phrase. In 2 nights at the tower, you file that away. Then something else catches your attention, a slip of paper passed from one hand to another. Always paper. You never get the paper. You slip down from the crate's boots, landing softly in the dirt. No sense getting caught now. Not this close to a lead. Back on the main road, the bells toll the hour 6 chimes, slow and solemn. Dusk settles fast, pressing shadows into the corners of every building. The street lamps, those few that exist, flicker uncertainly, like they too are debating whether this town is worth illuminating. You return to your alley, the one near the bakery where you stash your gear behind a loose brick. The bundle is still there untouched, a rare comfort. You swap your outer cloak for one that smells only marginally better, and eat half a dried plum you've been saving for a special occasion. You're not sure if this qualifies as special, but it's close enough. Then, you do something strange even for you. You visit the bathhouse. It's not because you want to. It's because your contact said the tower guards sometimes drink there, and guards tend to talk more after steam and ale. You pay the fee 2 coppers and a suspicious look and step into the warmth. Steam curls around you, instantly fogging your vision and your regrets. You strip down just enough to blend in, then sink into the shallow end of a communal pool and eavesdrop. There's chatter about taxes, about soup, about someone's cousin who got kicked by a mule and thinks he's a duck now. Then finally something useful. Heard they're doubling the watch near the tower. Something about a shipment or a prisoner. Prisoner, I think. Someone important. They cleared out the entire floor. Still better than that tax collector last week. You close your eyes and let the heat work on your aching shoulders. Important prisoner. Tower. 2 nights. It fits. You soak just long enough to stop smelling like despair, then leave before the water has a chance to go cold. You dress quickly, stash your damp clothes behind a trough, and slip back into the streets under full darkness. The market has emptied. The wind whistles between buildings like a song no one remembers the words to. You move quietly like a bad memory. Back in your alley, you make camp, which means a bundle of straw, your less wet cloak, and a wall that blocks half the wind. You wrap yourself tight and lie down. You stare at the sky, what little of it you can see between the rooftops. Clouds crawl across it slow and low. The moon is hiding tonight. Probably smart. You listen to the city settling. Dogs barking, doors closing, a muffled laugh. A lute strumming somewhere you can't reach. You tuck your hand beneath your head, feel the familiar shape of your dagger, and let yourself breathe a little deeper. It's not peace, but it's close enough. You wake up cold. Not surprising, given that your mattress was a pile of straw and your blanket was optimism. The wind found its way down your collar sometime around midnight and set up camp near your spine. Your shoulder aches, your hips feel like someone borrowed them for jousting practice, and your left boot is mysteriously damper than you remember. Still, you're alive. That's always the first win of the day. You sit up slowly, brush straw from your cloak, and blink at the pale grey sky overhead. It's not quite dawn, but the city is already sighing back to life. A bell tolls somewhere deep in the merchant quarter. Far off a rooster crows like it's trying to make up for being late. You rub warmth into your hands and pull your hood up tight. You still smell faintly of steam and soap from the bathhouse, which in this part of town makes you smell suspicious. You need to fix that. So you head to the baker's alley and stand near the oven vent until the scent of flour and smoke replaces anything remotely clean. You also manage to snag a misshapen end crust the baker drops accidentally near you. You nod your thanks. She pretends not to see. You chew slowly. It's dry but warm. You call it breakfast. You move out again, winding through the waking city toward the old chapel. It's not the target, but it's a waypoint. A contact post. The place is mostly abandoned now. A cracked bell tower. Vines creeping through the roof tiles. A few faded saints stare down from stained glass like they've given up on everything. You like it here. You knock 3 times on the side door. Nothing. You wait. Then the door creaks open a sliver and a young boy peers out. He's got big eyes, a nervous shuffle, and an accent that suggests his parents didn't plan to raise a courier. You hand him a token, the scratched fish, and say, "Tell the owl the fox has a feather." He frowns. Do owls eat foxes? Not the point. He shrugs and disappears. You settle near the altar where the light filters through dust in gold streaks. You stretch your legs and run through your plan. Tonight's meeting at the tower. Unknown prisoner. Increased guard. And now a new variable. Your old friend the thief mentioned the pear guy owes money. That could make him reckless. Or generous. Either one is useful. You hear footsteps. The boy returns, shuffles toward you and hands you a small note folded into a triangle. You open it. Rooftop. 1 hour before dusk. North wall. You nod and toss the boy a coin. He catches it clumsily and vanishes again. You stand brush off the worst of the chapel's neglect and head out into the city once more. There's a lot to do before dusk. First, stop the market. You weave through the crowd, keeping to the edges, eyes sharp for anything useful or unusual. A vendor is selling second-hand boots 2 left feet naturally. Another is hawking witch-proof cloaks, which are mostly just damp burlap. Still, you admire the hustle. You pick up a new belt leather, thin, slightly cracked, but still stronger than your current one. You trade 3 buttons, a carved wooden rabbit, and half a whisper of a favour for it. You also find a small pouch of powdered chalk. Not useful in combat, but great for marking escape routes, or confusing guards, or leaving rude messages. From there, you detour through the tanner's alley, where a few choice words with a form of fence gets you a piece of wax-sealed parchment. Not forged, but real, someone else's old pass for the upper towers. You'll make it work. By midday, your feet are sore, your cloak is dustier, and your hands smell like onions and ink. Progress. You duck into a shaded courtyard and sit beneath a crooked statue of St. Ethelberta, patron of stubbornness and strategic silence. You eat the rest of the dry roll. It's worse now. But your stomach thanks you anyway. Then it's time to scout the tower. You make your way along the city wall, following the route you memorized weeks ago for an entirely different job. That one ended with you dangling from a windowsill and swearing you'd never come back here. And yet. The tower looms ahead, square and heavy, flanked by guards in mismatched chainmail. Most of them are chatting, one is napping. You note the gaps. You circle wide and climb to the adjoining roof slowly, quietly, using the old drainage pipe that someone has thankfully not repaired. At the top, you perch near the chimney of a small outbuilding. From here you can see everything: the tower's courtyard, the upper ramparts, and the narrow ledge where you'll need to balance later. You breathe deep, steady, and pull your hood low. There's something about a rooftop. Up here the world makes more sense. It's smaller, simpler. Everyone moves below you unaware. Everyone has a pattern, a rhythm. Even you, especially you. You stay until the bells toll 5. Then you slip away like smoke back into the alleyway's cloak, flapping just enough to remind you you're still part of the wind. You're almost ready. You have 2 hours until dusk. That's just enough time to make everything worse if you're not careful. So you focus. You've done your scouting. You've memorized the guard shifts. You've pocketed a pass that may or may not fool the tower's steward. And now you need the one thing every good job hinges on: stillness. but first goats, because of course there are goats. You're halfway down the alley, leading toward your temporary hideout, when 3 of them wander across your path. One pauses, stares, chews. You stare back. You don't blink. Neither does the goat. There's a strange tension in the air, the kind usually reserved for duels or particularly awkward family dinners. Then slowly you sidestep. The goat mirrors you. Not now, you mutter. It huffs. You turn down a side alley and take the long route because arguing with a goat is a battle no one wins, not even assassins. Eventually you reach the ruined bell tower. It's one of those half-forgotten places in the city, too broken to be useful, too stone-heavy to be cleared away. The door groans as you push it open. Inside, dust motes dance like lazy spirits. You climb the narrow stairs and settle near a gap in the wall facing the tower across the street. From here you can see your target location, the north wall. 1 hour from now you'll be up there, hidden beneath that jutting ledge, waiting to see who arrives. And why? You check your tools. Dagger sharpened for once. Sleeping powder portioned out and tied in a bit of cloth. Spare cloak rolled and ready to drop if things go badly, and you need to create a distraction. It worked once with a loaf of bread. People assume whatever falls from above is important. You close your eyes and breathe. You let your mind quiet. For all the chaos, the near misses, the goat feuds, this is the part you're good at. The waiting, the watching, the not being seen. Historians still debate whether medieval assassins trained formally or learned by necessity. Your life leans hard toward necessity. You were never handed a manual, just mistakes and bruises and more than a few hasty exits. But still here you are. You keep your eyes on the tower. The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows through the crooked windows. Birds wheel overhead. Somewhere a bell tolls 6. Showtime. You slip out of the bell tower and descend to street level. The air is cooler now, touched with the scent of wood smoke and distant stew. You cross through a tangle of alleyways, your steps light, your cloak low. You approach the wall, casually blending into a group of workers unloading crates. No one looks at you twice. You slip away at the last moment, ducking behind a barrel and scaling the wall with practiced movements. You find your spot. It's narrow, dusty, just wide enough to crouch behind the stone overhang. You settle in eyes on the courtyard below. The sun dips. Shadows stretch. The gate opens. 2 guards enter, escorting a figure in chains. You squint. The prisoner walks tall, not the slouch of someone defeated. There's pride in the posture, defiance. A noble, maybe. Or someone pretending. Behind them, the man in green. Of course, he speaks briefly with the steward, points toward the upper tower, then disappears inside. You frown. This is bigger than a shipment or a stolen scroll. This is a handoff, a transfer. You shift your weight, trying to get a better view, and your foot brushes loose stone. It clatters down the wall like a guilty cough. You freeze. One of the guards looks up. You press yourself flat, motionless. A long breath. The guard says something. Another shrugs. Nothing happens. You wait 5 more minutes, heart loud in your ears. Then you hear it, a voice low, urgent nearby. Rooftop. You move before the words, finish slipping back along the ledge and ducking behind a chimney. A figure climbs up the opposite side. They're masked, cloaked, carrying something long and narrow. Not a guard, not yours. Another one of you. You watch as they set up position, focused fast and clearly not expecting company. You creep closer. The figure doesn't hear you. They're too intent on the scene below. You're 2 paces behind. 1. Their niece spot you. Whisper. They whirl, blade raised. Too slow. You knock it aside with your forearm twist and press your dagger against their side. They freeze. You lean close. Who hired you? Silence. Then, not your business. You smile. I make everything my business. They shove back, disengaging, retreating to the far edge of the roof. You don't pursue. Instead, you hold up your hands, just watching. Like you. They hesitate, then vanish, flipping backward over the edge like they rehearsed it. Show off. You exhale and settle back into position. The prisoner has vanished into the tower, the man in green too. But now you know you're not the only watcher tonight, and maybe you're not even the only blade. You stay on the roof until the tower goes dark. One window flickers with torchlight for a while, then fades. The guards trade shifts, 2 leave 2, take their place. The rhythm of it settles like a song you've heard too many times, but still hum under your breath. You don't hum, of course, that would be ridiculous. But the idea is there. When you're finally certain no one else is going to climb up behind you or throw a rock down from above you, ease your way back down the ledge. Your knees crack. Your cloak snags once tears slightly. You mutter something about the cost of repairs and land in a crouch behind a stack of crates. The street is mostly empty now. Midnight in this part of the city is a strange beast. It's not silent. Far from it. There are carts creaking slowly along stone paths, dogs barking in the distance, a baby crying in a third-floor window, and laughter. Always laughter muffled and sudden, the kind that makes you wonder whether it's joy or something darker. You keep to the edges, slipping through alleys, avoiding torchlight. Back at your temporary hideout, a storage room behind the cooper's shop, you unroll your cloak and stretch out on the floor. The straw here is fresh. Relatively. It only smells slightly like pickled cabbage. You close your eyes. But you don't sleep. Not yet. Instead, you replay the rooftop encounter. Another assassin. Or agent. Or mercenary who reads too much and doesn't bathe. Doesn't matter. They were there. They had a position. They had a target. You weren't it this time. You roll onto your side, rest your cheek on your arm, and let your thoughts drift like wood on dark water. Historians still argue whether assassins work together in loose guilds or simply crossed paths by accident like wild dogs with similar roots and terrible luck. You're starting to believe both are true. Sometimes you see the same eyes more than once. Sometimes you recognize the pattern in someone's silence. And sometimes you find a note tucked where only a shadow dweller would look, like now. You sit up. Your fingers brush against a corner of parchment wedged between the floorboards. Unfold it. It reads tower. 2 nights, not what it seems. Bring smoke, no signature, but the handwriting, it's hers. The thief, your not quite friend, your sometime ally, the one who once stole a bishop's purse and left behind a daisy. You smile without meaning to. She's better at this than most people you know. If she says not what it seems, you listen. Smoke, that'll mean distraction, or cover, or a trick she hasn't explained yet. You tuck the note inside your boot where secrets tend to live. Then finally, you sleep. A few hours later, you wake to a rooster who's clearly confused about his job and starts crowing at the moon. You consider throwing something. You don't. Instead, you rise, brush off the straw and step outside. It's cold, damp. Not quite rain, but air heavy enough to make everything slightly more miserable. You grab your bundle, check your supplies, and head toward the docks. Today isn't about following or watching. Today is about smoke. The docks are their own world, wooden planks slick with brine sails, flapping in a breeze too tired to be useful, and fish. Always fish. In barrels. On hooks. Hanging from windows. You know a man who sells powders here. Unofficially. He calls himself Dust. Probably not his birth name. Probably not legal either. You find him where you always do, behind a stack of crates labelled oysters that definitely contain no oysters. He nods at you without smiling. Need something that burns without flame, you say. Smoke. Thick. Won't choke me to death. He grunts. Grey or black. He vanishes behind the crates and returns with a small jar and a folded packet. The jar burns longer. The packet's faster. You want loud. You shake your head. Just confusing. He adds another packet. For drama, he says. You give him a small silver coin and a button carved with a fish. He seems satisfied. You head back into the city. You have 1 day left before the meeting at the tower. Plenty of time to ruin everything in advance. You spend it mapping escape routes, counting guards, marking doors that stick and windows that don't lock. You even take time to scribble a fake wanted poster with your own face just in case someone needs a reason to run. At one point, you slip into a bakery you've never been to and buy a roll. The baker looks at you like you've stolen something. You leave a second coin and no explanation. That evening you find her. The thief. She's sitting on a rooftop leg, swinging over the edge, tossing pebbles at chimney pots. You got the note, she says without turning. I got the smoke, you reply. She smiles. Then we've got a show to put on. You sit beside her on the rooftop, the sky fading from ash to ink as the stars struggle to pierce the cloud cover. Her boots dangle a few inches above a shuttered window. Yours stay planted. You've never trusted heights that encourage dangling. She tosses another pebble. It hits the chimney with a small clink. She grins like it's an achievement. So she says, without looking at you, "What do you think's in that tower?" You exhale. Not a merchant. No, she agrees. And not just a prisoner either. You nod. Something bigger. Something heavier, she adds, than gold. There's a long silence. The wind moves gently over the rooftops, stirring cloaks and whispering through chimneys. Somewhere in the city below, a lute strums a lullaby you don't know. She finally looks at you. You remember Durnhelm. You nod slowly. You do. A city that burned from the inside out. A noble's private army. A vault emptied, and a name that vanished from every scroll by morning. You never found out what it was for. She leans closer. Same feeling. You don't say anything because there's nothing to say. She pulls a small pouch from her coat and drops it in your lap. Powdered coals, black pepper and sawdust soaked in vinegar. Light it, and nobody sees anything for at least 5 breaths. You heft it gently impressed. Smells like sin. Works like it too. You tuck it away and ask the question that's been curling in your chest since you read her note. "What's your play?" She shrugs. Haven't decided. Depends what happens. Depends on who shows up. You study her face. She's not nervous. Not exactly. But her shoulders are tight. Her eyes scan the streets below like they're reading a map made of shadows. "You in?" she asks. You nod. Always. And you mean it. Historians still argue whether assassins in the Middle Ages were lone wolves or pack animals, silent blades in alleys, or coordinated ghosts with whisper networks. You've always worked alone. Until her. You never decided to trust her. It just happened. Tomorrow, the tower. Tonight, preparation. You part ways at the old bell tower, agreeing on signals on fallback points on when to cut and run. You share a piece of hard cheese and the last of your dried pear. It's the closest thing to dinner either of you is getting. Then you sleep. Not much, but enough. Dawn comes grey and grim. You rise, stretch, and crack your neck until it sounds like distant cartwheels. You eat a mouthful of bread that would qualify as a weapon in most regions. Then you pack 2 daggers. 1 short, 1 curved, 3 smoke packets, 1 flashy, 2 thick. A change of cloak, darker, shorter, easier to run in. A strip of cloth to cover your face if needed. You're ready. You meet her in the alley behind the tannery. She's already dressed for trouble eyes shining like she's glad the boring part's over. Together, you make your way to the tower. You split before the main gate. She goes left, you go up. The north wall is quieter today. Fewer guards. Possibly because they think last night's patrol was uneventful. Possibly because someone bribed someone. You don't ask. You climb again, different path this time. An overhanging beam, a narrow pipe, the usual moments of regret. From your perch you see movement in the courtyard. The prisoner again. Standing tall, still shackled, still proud. But this time they're surrounded. 5 men. None in uniform. And there, him. The man in green. He looks older today. Or maybe just tired. He's holding something flat, square, wrapped in dark cloth. You can't hear the words. But you don't need to. You see the thief slipping along the edge of the courtyard, hidden in plain sight. She's reaching for something near the prisoner. A chain, a key. You ready your packet. You wait. Then one of the men moves too fast. The thief reacts. The prisoner yells. Everything explodes into motion. You strike the match. The smoke packet bursts to life, thick, choking, perfect. Shouts, confusion, footsteps scrambling. You leap. You land behind the nearest guard and sweep his feet. He hits the ground hard. You grab the chain. You pull. The prisoner stumbles, then follows. The thief is already moving, cloak, swirling blade flashing. Together, you run. Out the gate, down the alley, through the bakery again. Over barrels, under laundry, past that same goat who blinks like he expected this. You don't stop until the bell tower is behind you. Then you breathe. The prisoner leans against a wall, panting. The thief grins, wipes blood from her cheek, and says, "Next time, fewer stairs." You nod, heart still racing. Because it's done. Or at least this part is. You don't speak for a while. No one does. The thief crouches beside the prisoner, checking a bruised wrist and murmuring something too soft to catch. You lean against the wall, lungs still catching up, ears ringing faintly from the shouting and the smoke. Your knees ache. Your boots are soaked. Your shoulder has a new complaint. But you're out. You're all out. The bell tower stands tall behind you, cloaked in smoke and confusion. If anyone saw your faces, they won't be able to describe them. If anyone counted your footsteps, they're already second-guessing themselves. It's the best you could have asked for. Still, who are you? You ask the prisoner, your voice quiet. They lift their head, dirt smudged across one cheek, hair matted, but their eyes sharp. Calculating. Someone who needed to not be there anymore, they say. Their voice is calm, clipped, educated, nobility maybe, or someone pretending. Hard to tell these days. The thief shrugs. Good enough for me. You aren't so sure. But your part's done for now. You step away from the wall and glance down the alley. No movement, no shouts. Just the city settling back into its usual rhythm of creaks and curses. You exhale. We need to move, you say. Split up, the thief nods. I'll take our mystery guest east, through the orchard lanes. You raise an eyebrow. You trust them, I trust me, she replies. Fair. You hand her your last smoke packet just in case and turn to go. Wait, the prisoner calls softly. You pause. They look at you, eyes still razor sharp. Why did you help you think about it? The note, the strange meetings, the man in green, the way everything felt wrong, the look in her eyes when she said, not what it seems, but mostly you're tired of doing nothing. Because someone needed to, you say. They nod once like that answer is good enough. Maybe better than they expected. You don't look back as you walk away. You disappear into the streets like fog that forgot how to lift. Or you lie low for a few days. No jobs, no clients, no messages tucked into boots or bread loaves. Just quiet. You spend a night in the old shrine to St. Cedric wrapped in a borrowed blanket and your own lingering doubts. You help a street kid steal onions from a cart. You trade a story for a spoon. It's almost peaceful. Then the knock comes. 3 raps. Slow, familiar. You open the door to find her the thief wet from the rain, eyes bright holding a small wooden box. Thought you should see this, she says. You let her in, stoke the fire, and sit. She opens the box. Inside a seal. Broken. Wax in the shape of a falcon. You frown. Royal. She nods, but not local. You glance at the papers tucked beneath it. Letters, names, places, the kind of things people vanish over. Where do you get this? The prisoner, she says. They left it for us. Said we'd know what to do. You lean back, rub your face with both hands. You've been part of schemes before, smuggling secrets, the occasional noble scandal involving cheese, but this feels bigger, dangerous in a new cold way. Do we know what to do, you ask? She smirks. Of course not. You both laugh. It's short, tired, but real. Then she pours 2 cups of ale from a dented flask, and you sit in silence reading royal whispers by firelight. Historians still argue whether assassins were pawns or players, whether they followed orders or shaped the board. You never asked to shape anything. But here you are, with ink on your fingers and smoke still clinging to your sleeves. It's a strange kind of peace. Until the next knock, which comes naturally 2 days later. This one is louder, urgent. You both freeze. You blow out the candle. She slips behind the curtain. You open the door slowly. A boy stands there, different from before. This one's older, breathing, hard, holding a sealed scroll. For the fox, he says. You take it. He runs. You open the scroll. Westgate, sunset. Bring her, or it begins. No signature, no emblem, just ink sharp and familiar. The man in green. You look at the thief. She looks at you. No one speaks for a long while. Then she says, "Do we go?" You don't answer, because you already know you will. You go. Of course you go. You don't talk about it much, not between yourselves, not even in your own heads. There's something about certain decisions that live better in silence, like pulling a blade or walking into fire. They're cleaner when unspoken. Sunset approaches fast. The sky bleeds gold and rust like the world is blushing before night settles in. You travel light, no cloak, no second pair of boots, Just your dagger, your wits, and the stolen information tucked into a stitched pocket behind your collarbone. She walks beside you, steady as always, her expression unreadable. Her boots don't make a sound. You envy that. The West Gate is one of the oldest parts of the city, less guarded than it should be, crumbling in places, the kind of ruin people pass by daily but never quite repair. It's fitting. You arrive early, crouched in the shadow of a broken cart, eyes trained on the path ahead. The road curves through an arch where moss grows thicker than stone. Lanterns flicker weakly. No guards, no voices, just the sound of the wind rolling over loose cobbles. She says we're being watched. You nod. 3 angles, maybe 4. She smiles faintly. They're getting sloppy. You wait. Minutes pass. A shape detaches from the shadows near the archway. Cloaked, hooded, moves like someone who knows they're being seen. The man in green. He walks with the confidence of someone who's never heard the word consequence. You stand as he approaches. He stops 3 paces away. So he says you open the box. You tilt your head. You expected us not to. I expected you to steal it. The thief snorts. Technically, we liberated it. He doesn't smile. You don't understand what's in those letters. You reach into your coat and draw out the scroll, unrolling it slowly. I know this seal. I know these names. I know the people who would kill to keep this quiet. He watches your hands carefully. Then you know why I need it back. She steps forward, arms crossed. You had it, and you were going to sell it. His silence answers for him. You glance around. The shadows are thicker now. Closer. Movement behind the crumbled columns. You count 4, no 5. That confirms it. You fold the parchment and tuck it back inside your coat. He frowns. You're not very good at negotiation. Neither are you, you reply if you brought 6 men to a conversation. They're for insurance, he says. She steps in. Well, so is this. She raises her hand and hurls a smoke packet into the ground. The world becomes mist and coughing. You don't wait for it to settle. You grab her arm and pull her backward through the gap in the crumbling wall. You've scouted this exit before. It's tight, uneven, and smells like mildew, but it leads down into the old grain tunnels and no one follows easily there. You descend fast, slipping on damp stone. Her breath is steady beside you. Behind you muffled shouts and the clang of metal. No pursuit yet. The tunnel stretches forward, lit only by memory. You run your hand along the wall until you find the marker. 3 carved lines and a crescent. Left turn. You take it. The path opens into an old cellar long abandoned. Crates turn to mulch cobwebs thick as cloth. You slam the door behind you and brace it with a beam. She leans against the wall, laughing softly. Still better than your last plan. That one worked, you say. Eventually, you light a stub of candle from your pouch. The flame sputters, then steadies. You both sit, breathing, recovering. She pulls the box from her pack. Still think we shouldn't burn it. You don't answer immediately. Historians still argue whether knowledge in the Middle Ages was power danger or simply inconvenient. Right now, in this dusty crypt, it feels like all 3. Inside that box, correspondence between foreign lords, secret alliances, trade deals disguised as marriage offers. Enough ink to tilt a crown, enough names to empty a palace. And you're holding it. You stare at the flame. No, you say quietly. We don't burn it. She nods. You both know what comes next. No more hiding. No more passing notes in bread loaves. You need someone else to see this. Someone loud, someone immune. The question is who? She pulls a scroll from her boot. I have an idea. Of course she does. You unroll it. A map. Old, faded, marked in a language you barely recognize. Where does this go? East, she says. Past the river, through the wetlands, to the place with no taxes, no lords, and no doors that stay locked. You raise an eyebrow. Sounds fictional. She grins. Most good things are. You nod slowly. It's time to leave the city. Tomorrow. But for now you curl up near the guttering flame the box cradled between you and try to rest. It won't be easy, but that's never stopped you before. The city wakes before you do. You hear it in the faint creak of wagons on cobblestones, in the flap of laundry being shaken out above street-level windows in the rooster who simply refuses to retire. You open your eyes to the flicker of candlelight on damp stone and the quiet sounds of her moving near the crates tying bundles tight with twine and purpose. You sit up slowly, every joint offering an unsolicited opinion. Your back aches from the uneven cellar floor. Your mouth tastes like straw regret and one too many stolen apples. But you're alive. Again. That's starting to become a habit. She tosses you a dried fig. Breakfast. You chew it as you stand. You know this road. She nods, pulling her hair back into a braid. I've taken it once, years ago, with someone who knew how to get lost properly. Did they make it? She shrugs. I did. Fair enough. You extinguish the stub of your candle pack, the scrolls and the box into a cloth pouch and tuck it inside your coat. It feels heavier today, though the weight hasn't changed. That's how it goes with dangerous things. They get heavier once you know what they're worth. You crack the cellar door and peer out. No one. The smoke and panic from last night must have held. That or the man in green has decided to retreat, recalculate and return when you least want him to. You don't like either option. She's already moving, slipping into the street like a rumour no one can confirm. You follow. The morning city is grey and damp. Street vendors set up slowly yawning, muttering, swatting away pigeons with the authority of kings. You pass a woman pouring water from a window, a dog asleep in the middle of the road, and a small boy yelling turnips like it's a war cry. It's strange to leave like this, quiet, unchased, but you know better than to get comfortable. You reach the outer market road by mid-morning. The stables near the gate are your last stop. You still have one contact left. Bren, horse trader, professional liar, partial to bribes. He sees you and smiles without warmth. Thought you'd be dead by now. Not for lack of trying, you say. He squints at the thief. This your sidekick. She steps forward. I steal faster than he breathes. Charming, Bren replies and spits into a barrel. You don't waste time. We need 2 horses. Quiet ones. Built for distance, not speed. He nods. Cost you. You hand him a silver coin and a note with a name you owe a favour. He looks at it. Grimaces. She still owes me 2 ducks. She says they exploded. He snorts. Of course they did. He brings out the horses, stocky, unremarkable, and exactly what you need. One's got a crooked ear. The other might be narcoleptic. You name them Victory and Backup. The thief raises an eyebrow. You always name your escape animals, only the ones I like. You mount up, adjust your satchels, and ride out through the west gate without looking back. No one stops you. No one calls out. The guards at the gate don't even blink. You're just 2 more travellers on the road heading east. The silence stretches behind you like spilled ink. The road isn't kind. Ruts, mud, stones that pretend to be solid then shift underfoot like disloyal secrets. The horses plod on. You follow a worn path marked by wagon grooves and half-covered milestones. By late afternoon the city has gone from view, replaced by trees, fields, a wide sky that doesn't seem to end. You pass a shepherd with 2 sheep and a lute. He sings something about lost boots and a woman named Frida. You drop a coin into his hand. He nods, still singing. The thief rides ahead, scanning the horizon. Her hood is down. Her braid swings like punctuation. You catch up, so you ask what's east. She shrugs. Freedom. Possibly frogs. Definitely marshes. Great, you mutter. I love amphibious uncertainty. She smiles. Historians still argue whether fugitives in medieval times fled toward justice or just away from their last mistake. You suspect it was both. And right now, you're not fleeing, you're relocating. You're repurposing. You're adventuring, which is just fleeing with better posture. The road narrows as you near the river. Trees crowd close. Shadows grow longer. You camp near a stone bridge, half-collapsed water gurgling below, like it knows something you don't. The fire crackles. She cooks something in a dented tin pot that smells vaguely of root vegetables and defiance. You share a stale loaf and a story about the time you pretended to be a priest to avoid taxes. It worked. Briefly. She tells you about a town where the mayor was a dog, elected twice. Voter turnout was excellent. You both laugh. It's nice. It won't last. But it's nice. Later, as you lie beneath the stars, the box rests near your head like a third companion. You don't sleep well, but you sleep enough. And in your dreams, the man in green smiles without blinking. You wake to the smell of wet moss and last night's fire turned to ash. She's already awake, crouched by the riverbank, watching the mist lift in tendrils over the slow dark water. The horses snort gently nearby, tails flicking at invisible nuisances. You sit up, stretch, and immediately regret it. Your neck feels like it tried to strangle you in your sleep. She doesn't turn around, just says, "We should cross before the ferry wakes up." You glance at the broken bridge, then at the water. Wide, quiet. But you know rivers like this still on the surface, swift underneath, like lies, or nobles. "There's no boat, you say." She grins. "That's why we go now. You eat a cold root for breakfast. It tastes like chewing someone's bad idea. Then you pack up and lead the horses downstream to the shallow crossing she scouted before you even woke. Of course she did. The water is cold. Not cold like city fountains. Cold like your sins just got baptized. You cross slowly, guiding Victory and back up one step at a time, careful not to slip. She crosses ahead of you, soaked to the knees, expression unreadable. You're halfway through when something shifts under your foot. You stumble, a splash, a curse. Water up to your waist. Victory yanks the reins, eyes wide. Back up, ever faithful, just stops and sighs. You make it across, soaked and bitter. She's already wringing out her sleeves. "You're not a morning person, are you?" You shiver. "I'm not a river person." She hands you a dry scrap of cloth, then stay out of the deep parts. Historians still argue whether medieval rivers were more danger than convenience. Merchants called them trade routes. Assassins called them hiding places. You currently call them rude. You push on, following the muddy trail into a thicker stretch of woods. The air smells like pine and memory. Birdsong flits in the canopy overhead, cheerful and absolutely unnecessary. The trail bends. A fork. One path leads uphill, drier, safer exposed. The other downward into a thicket of bramble and fog. She points. "That way?" You raise an eyebrow. "Of course it is. It's slow going. Roots claw at your boots. The mud grabs your heels like it's in love with suffering. Every step is a negotiation. But eventually the trees thin and the world opens. Wetlands, marshes, a stretch of land that's more sponge than soil. Reeds sway in the breeze. Insects hum a lazy tune. And somewhere in the distance something lets out a croak that sounds like a grudge. She leads you to a crooked wooden shack balanced on stilts like a spider's idea of architecture. You dismount, knock. No answer. You try again. Still nothing. Then the door creaks open, and a woman appears wrapped in more shawls than a winter festival, eyes sharp-nosed sharper. She looks you both up and down. "Thought you were dead," she says to the thief. "Not for lack of trying," she replies. The woman nods, steps aside, and gestures you in. You enter. The interior smells like herbs, tea, and stubbornness. Bundles of dried plants hang from the ceiling. A large black kettle simmers without flame. A cat blinks at you from a rafter. The woman, you never catch her name, brews tea and says nothing. You sit. You wait. Eventually she speaks. "So, you brought trouble." She says it like she's commenting on the weather. You nod. The thief lays the box on the table. The woman doesn't touch it, just looks. "Royal," she mutters. "Northern. Dangerous." You wait. She continues. You'll want to take it further east, past the hill fort, through the hollow fields, to the archive that's not supposed to exist. You exchange a glance with the thief. She raises an eyebrow. "That archive's a myth." The woman smirks. "So are you." "Fair point." She hands you a map. It's old, edges singed, drawn by someone who liked riddles more than roads. "Follow the stone with 3 cuts," she says. "Turn at the tree that bleeds red. After that, listen for bells. Bells, they'll find you." She serves you a bitter tea and bread that tastes like regret, and you leave as the sun starts to fall. The marsh swallows your footsteps. The sky turns violet. You ride through reeds and silence, guided by fading light and a map that makes more suggestions than promises. You stop at a flat stone marked with 3 deep grooves. There you camp. The fire is small. She sits close, sharpening her blade, the sparks catching in her hair. You lie back, arms behind your head, eyes on stars that flicker like they know too much. "We should have burned it," you say softly. She doesn't look up, but we didn't. You both fall silent. In the distance something croaks. Closer now. Dawn comes slow in the wetlands. The mist rises like smoke off a battlefield, low thick and tinged with gold from a sun that hasn't quite decided to commit to the day. You wake with your arm numb, your back damp, and a mosquito the size of a walnut hovering nearby with what you're convinced is a vendetta. The thief's already up, of course. She stands at the edge of the clearing, studying the map like it insulted her. Her hood's down hair braided, tight boots already mud-spattered. You join her, brushing sleep from your eyes. "We pass the stone," you murmur. She nods. Next is the tree that bleeds. You squint at the surrounding swamp. There are about 1,000 trees here. Half of them look like they've committed crimes. She grins. That's why it's fun. You pack quickly, there's not much left to pack. The bread is mostly crumbs, and Victory has developed a limp in the back left leg, probably from wading through 3 hours of poorly defined land yesterday. Backup, meanwhile, continues to exist with the resigned patience of a creature that's seen worse. You follow the trail eastward, if it can even be called that. It twists through cattails and willow thickets, disappearing entirely at times, beneath puddles wide enough to question. Birds call overhead, insects drone around your ears, and the occasional frog leaps out of your path like it's carrying secrets. Then you see it, a tree, gnarled, leaning like it's sighing, and from one low-cut branch a dark red sap drips slowly into the mud. The tree that bleeds. You stop. She checks the map, nods, and traces a path leading just beyond the clearing to a low hill covered in bent grass and pale wildflowers. That's the turn. You mount up again, following her toward the rise. At the top, the wind picks up cooler here, cleaner. The marsh stretches behind you like an ink blot. Ahead, a stretch of rolling hills dotted with half-buried stones and crooked fence posts that seem too old to still stand. And in the distance, nestled in a shallow valley, a building. Small, stone, unassuming. A chapel. You exchange a glance. She gestures. Let's see if the bells are home. The path down is easier than expected. Firm soil, fewer brambles, a breeze that carries the scent of pine and old parchment. As you approach the building, you notice details. The windows are stained, but the images have faded. The front door is oak banded in iron, but the knocker is missing, and just above the threshold a tiny brass bell. She reaches up and rings it once. No echo. Just silence. Then movement. The door creaks open. Inside stands an old man wrapped in a robe the colour of faded soot. His beard could be mistaken for part of his cloak. His eyes are grey, not with age, but with something deeper memory perhaps, or the sheer weight of secrets. He looks at both of you, then the horses, then back at you. "You've come far," he says. You nod. "We have something that needs to be kept. Or shared. Or both." He doesn't move. "Who sent you?" You answer truthfully. "No one." He studies you for a long moment. Then he opens the door wider. "Then you may enter." Inside, the air is cool, dry. It smells like ink dust and faint wood smoke. Shelves line the walls filled with scrolls, books, bundles of notes tied with waxed string. You pass a doorway marked with an hourglass and descend into a chamber that feels more carved than built. He leads you to a table. "Place it here." You set the box down. He doesn't touch it, just gazes at it. You understand what's in this. "Some of it," you reply. He nods. "That's enough." The thief leans against the far wall, arms crossed. "You'll protect it." He tilts his head. "No, I'll record it." You frown. "Isn't that dangerous?" "Knowledge is never dangerous," he says softly. "People are." You glance at the thief. She's watching him like she's deciding whether he's a fool or the last sane person left. "Will you copy it?" she asks. "Or bury it both," he says. "One for the truth, one for the fire." You sit. Let the stillness settle in your bones. Historians still argue whether underground archives like this truly existed, hidden places where knowledge went to sleep waiting for safer times. Most call it a myth. You're in one now. He brings tea. It's bitter, strong. It tastes like promises kept in secret. You rest for an hour. Then reluctantly you rise. You don't stay long. You've left enough behind already. Before you leave, he hands you a small scroll. What's this, you ask? A record, he says. Of what you've done. You raise an eyebrow. Shouldn't that be secret? He smiles. Not for you. Someday you'll want to remember. You nod, tuck it away, and step back into the wind. Outside, the valley is quiet. You mount your horses. Neither of you speaks until the hill is behind you. Then she says, "We just gave the past a map." You nod. Let's hope the future reads it. You ride east again. The land begins to change, not quickly, but certainly. The air grows crisper, the trees taller, less hunched. The path winds through open glades and sleepy fields, stitched together by crooked fences and hedgerows that seem to whisper things when the wind passes through them. Neither of you says much. She rides ahead, shoulders relaxed, but eyes sharp, scanning every treetop, every passing rock. You follow with the scroll tucked safely under your cloak, the man's words echoing like a quiet footstep at the back of your mind. A record of what you've done. You're not used to being remembered. Assassins usually aren't. You crest a ridge as the sun spills gold across the hills. There's a farmstead in the distance, just a speck chimney smoking a pair of goats balancing on what may or may not have once been a roof. Civilization, she says dryly. You squint. That's a bold word. Still, it's shelter. Supplies, maybe. A warm fire if you're lucky. You turn the horses toward it. The path turns rocky, winding between clusters of tall grass and stubborn weeds. You pass an old milestone covered in moss. The year carved into it is so faded, it might as well be a guess. As you near the farmhouse, a boy spots you. He dashes inside like your cloaks are made of curses. You slow down. An older woman steps out a moment later, squinting. Her apron is stained with something dark and sticky. Possibly jam. Possibly blood. You give her the benefit of the doubt. Evening she calls. Evening the thief replies, dismounting. You do the same, pulling your hood back just enough to seem less like a brigand and more like a tired traveller who's seen one too many goats doing improbable things. We don't want trouble, you say. She snorts. If you did, you'd be late. My husband already dropped a hammer on his own foot, sympathy, the thief says. We carry plenty of that. The woman softens. You need food or news, both you reply. She gestures to a bench by the door. Sit. We've got root stew, fresh bread, and a neighbour who claims he saw a ghost in the grain mill. You trade a pouch of salt and 2 buttons for a bowl of stew. It's thick, smoky, and full of things you don't ask about. The bread is warm and sour, the kind that makes your teeth work for it. The thief leans close while you eat. They haven't heard anything, she whispers. No riders, no names, nothing. You nod slowly. That's good, and also strange. The man in green doesn't strike you as someone who gives up. You finish your stew. Thank the woman. Decline her offer of a second, helping you suspect it contains even more of the chewy bits. She hands you a satchel with dried apples and an odd coin bearing a deer. For luck, she says. You leave as the sky turns purple. The road climbs. You reach a plateau by nightfall and make camp beside a boulder shaped like a sleeping dog. The wind whistles gently through the grass. You sit close to the fire, unrolling the scroll the archivist gave you. It's simple, just a few lines. Written in a steady hand, 2 blades, 1 truth. A fire delayed, not doused. You stare at it for a long time. She leans back on her elbows. Weird poetry. You nod, but it's not wrong. She watches the stars blink awake. You think anyone will care, she asks. About what we did. You consider that. Historians still argue whether small deeds shift great tides or just ripple quietly before vanishing. You've always assumed you were just one shadow among many, but sometimes the right shadow falls in the right place. Maybe not, you say, but we'll know. She nods quiet. You pass the scroll back and lie on your side, watching the fire shrink as the night deepens. The wind picks up. You hear a distant owl, a rustle in the brush, a fox cry sharp and sudden. You don't move, because for once there's no chase behind you, and the stars above feel like they're watching, not waiting. You close your eyes, and sleep finally finds you without a fight. You wake with a start, not to danger, at least not immediately, but to silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath. The fire is out, the thief is gone. You sit up quickly, eyes scanning the empty clearing. The horses are still there, tethered and munching lazily on grass that likely regrets existing. Your dagger is at your side. Your pack is untouched, but the absence of her feels too loud. You rise. There's a trail, not one she meant to leave, but one you've learned how to follow. A scuffed boot mark, a bent stalk of grass, a scrap of cloth snagged on a branch. She went east, alone. You don't bother packing everything, just essentials, your blades, the scroll, a pouch of dried fruit. You toss a silent promise to victory and backup, to return though you suspect they've already begun forming plans of their own. You move quickly, quietly through the morning mist. 30 minutes in, you hear voices. You stop, duck low behind a tree and listen. She's one of them. The other voice male, smooth familiar. The man in green. You move closer. They're standing in a narrow glade surrounded by stone markers so old they've stopped pretending to be readable. He's facing her, calm hands clasped behind his back. She stands with her feet planted wide, defiant, but breathing hard. Should have stayed in the city, he's saying. At least there your endings are expected. She replies, you had your chance to end this clean. He sighs. You always were sentimental. You tighten your grip on your dagger. He continues, it's not personal, you know. It never was. That's the worst part, she says. And then he moves. Fast. A blur of green and steel. But she's faster. She dodges, slams a boot into his knee and draws her blade in one motion. He stumbles, regains balance, circles. You step from the trees. Thought I was the dramatic one, you say. They both freeze. He recovers first. Ah, the fox. You tilt your head, still using colours instead of names, easier to remember, easier to forget. You step forward. She shifts, falling into formation beside you like you rehearsed it. You didn't. But it's always been like this with her. 2 shadows, 1 rhythm. You came alone, you ask him. He smiles, of course not. Figures emerge from the woods, 3, maybe 4. It's hard to tell. They blend into the grey morning like bad news. The thief mutters, I've got the one on the left. I'll take the smug one. That narrows it down to 5. You sigh, then move. The fight isn't elegant. You're too tired, the ground's too soft. And at some point someone throws a pine cone at your head, which is frankly rude. But you're fast. You strike with muscle memory more than grace, letting instinct do what strategy would fumble. A blade grazes your arm, cold, sharp, shallow. You respond by sweeping your leg under your attacker and dropping them like bad fruit. She's already taken down 2. Her style is sharper, more precise, like she's editing a sentence she doesn't like. The man in green tries to run. You don't let him. You tackle him hard. Both of you go down in the mud. His elbow catches your ribs. Your knee finds his stomach. He gasps, and that's enough. You pin him. He laughs. Even now, mud in his teeth. You think this ends anything? No, you say. But it slows it down. You don't kill him. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because you want him to see what comes next. She binds his wrists with a strip of leather and hauls him to his feet. What now, she asks. You look at the nearest stone, faded, weathered, forgotten. We leave him a name. You carve it into the stone with the tip of your dagger. Not his name, yours, hers. A symbol, really. Something someone else might find someday. A mark. Then you walk away, leaving the man in green tied to the past he built. You don't look back. Historians still argue whether justice in the Middle Ages was about fairness or simply survival. You've never cared much about justice, but you do believe in endings, and this is one. You find your horses where you left them. They blink at you like you took too long. She mounts first. Next town's a day east. Should be quiet. You nod. We'll keep quiet. Until we don't. She offers a rare smile, and together you ride. The path winds forward, unknown and uneven, just the way you like it. You ride until your legs ache and your thoughts start to fray at the edges. The path shifts from forest to field, then narrows again, into something less like a road and more like a suggestion. Grass brushes your boots. A hawk circles overhead, indifferent to your mission or your sore spine. Neither of you speaks for a while. The wind does enough talking. Eventually the ground levels out, and a village appears more like a cluster of cottages huddled together against the breeze. A crooked sign hanging by a single nail welcomes you to Draycroft, though most of the letters have given up. You dismount near the edge. The place is quiet. Too quiet, no. Just small quiet. A few children kick a ball of rags in the mud. An old man feeds chickens that look older than he is. A woman with one eyebrow glares at you until you nod politely. She glares less after that. You stable the horses behind a tavern called the Weeping Turnip. The name alone suggests you won't be expecting much from the food. Inside it's dim, low-ceilinged and warmer than expected. The fire's generous. The clientele less so. A few heads turn, but no one says anything. The innkeeper is a narrow woman with broader shoulders than you. She sizes you up like you might try to steal a loaf of bread with your aura. You ask for a room. She asks for coin. You hand her 2 small silver pieces and get a key, a shrug, and the unspoken promise that she's watching you. She points up a slanted staircase. Second room on the left. Mind the door. It sticks. You mind the door. It sticks. The room is simple wooden frame beds, wool blankets, a window that may or may not be painted shut, but it's dry, and it's not a forest floor. You both flop onto your beds at the same time. Your groans harmonise. She turns her head toward you. We need to disappear for a bit. You nod. I vote 1 week of naps and soup. 3 days. 5. 4, but only if the soup's edible. Deal. You both fall quiet. It's strange stopping. You've lived by motion for so long that stillness feels suspicious. But it's necessary. You clean your wounds. Nothing serious, just bruises and slices. The thief helps you rewrap your shoulder. Her hands are warm. Her silence is understanding. Later downstairs, you eat stew made from something vaguely root-like and probably legal. You sit at a corner table, backs to the wall, spoons moving in synchronized rhythm. No one bothers you. No one asks questions. This is what safety looks like, or at least what it pretends to be. That night in the room, you can't sleep. The bed creaks every time you shift. You hear the wind outside, the slow whistle through warped wood, the distant sound of someone snoring with enthusiasm. You lie there, eyes on the ceiling, thinking about the scroll. You still have it, tucked into your pack, hidden beneath a pair of gloves and a rolled-up shirt that hasn't been cleaned since last season. You haven't read it again, not since the archivist handed it to you. A record of what you've done. You think about that. What have you done? You stopped something, yes. Prevented a truth from being buried, or maybe exposed it in the most careful, quiet way. But you're still here, still breathing, still dangerous. Historians still argue whether small players ever shape big moments or whether the world just tilts where it wants to. You don't feel like a hero, but you feel like a hinge, and sometimes that's enough. A rustle. Her bed creaks. You awake, she whispers. Of course. Do you think he's still out there? You don't ask who. You just nod. Probably. She sighs. I hate how calm he was. Calm people are the worst. Second worst, she corrects. People who hum while sharpening knives are first. You both laugh softly. Then she says, thanks for coming after me. You turn your head toward her. You knew I would. I hoped. Same thing. The silence after that is warmer. You drift off, not all the way, but enough. Morning arrives slow and gold-edged. The innkeeper brings bread and a boiled egg that's seen better days. You eat on the steps outside, watching fog lift off the fields. She finishes first. Then let's lie low a few more days. You nod. Then east, she shrugs. Or south. Somewhere they haven't invented taxes or politics. You believe in that? She grins. I believe in trying. So you stay. For now. 2 assassins. 1 scroll. A story the world might never read. But you remember it. And sometimes memory is the sharpest weapon you've got. The next few days stretch like warm wax. You fall into a rhythm, quiet mornings, long walks around the village perimeter, afternoons spent pretending you're not scanning faces for danger. The thief even teaches a few local kids how to rig a sling from a chicken bone and some discarded cloth. You pretend not to watch. You fail. She laughs more here. So do you. You fix a broken fence for the innkeeper in exchange for a boiled potato that tastes like generosity. You help an elderly man carry a sack of grain up a hill so steep it feels personal. You patch your cloak with thread from the weaver's daughter, who refuses payment and tells you your boots are tragically heroic. The town of Draycroft doesn't ask much from you, it just lets you be, and that's dangerous in its own way. Because eventually the stillness starts to feel comfortable. That's when you know it's time to leave. On the 5th day, a rider passes through. Tall, hooded, horse too fine for a traveller, boots too clean for a road. He doesn't stay the night, but he leaves behind a ripple. The tavern's talk grows quieter. Faces turn a little too fast. The boy you gave a carved whistle to won't meet your eyes. She notices it too. That night upstairs she spreads the map on the floor. There's a river 2 days south, she says. Past it a monastery. Quiet, isolated, safe. You nod. Safer than here. She packs slowly. You do too. Neither of you says the word pursued, but it lingers in the corners like dust. But you leave just before sunrise. The villagers don't come out to say goodbye, but you see them peeking from windows. Even the woman with the single eyebrow offers the smallest of nods. The road is soft underfoot, the sky pale with promise, the fields glitter with dew. You don't look back, not because you're cold, because you've learned not to. Well, the first day's travel is uneventful. The second isn't. It starts with a sound, a whistle, not bird, not wind, the kind you use to alert someone quietly. You freeze mid-step. She does too. You step off the trail, press into the underbrush. A few minutes later, 2 riders appear on the path, not dressed like soldiers, but riding like ones. One of them carries something long and wrapped in cloth. The other wears green. Not the man in green, but his mark. You watch. They pass slowly. She whispers, "They're still tracking." You nod. We leave false trails. So you do. Double back, loop through creeks, break twigs in the wrong direction, drop a torn strip of cloth caught on a branch. It won't hold them forever, but you don't need forever. You just need distance. By the time you reach the river, the sun is folding in on itself. You cross at dusk, water up to your waist boots dragging like they're tired of this too. The monastery looms on a distant hillstone, an ivy bell tower crooked like it's listening for gossip. You arrive, soaked, muddy, and quiet. The monk at the gate doesn't ask questions, just sees the scroll tucked into your coat and nods once. You'll want the cellar, he says. You descend. The cellar is dry, warm, lit with beeswax candles. Smells like old pages and stronger faith than you've ever carried. He brings food, simple bread, warm soup water with mint. You eat, you dry off, you breathe. Then you hand him the scroll. He unrolls it carefully, reads again. Finally, you've done something important. You shrug. Doesn't feel like it. He looks at you. Truth rarely does. Not until it's too late to silence. She leans back against the wall. So what now? He folds the scroll. Now it waits. In the vault, you glance at her. She nods. Let it sleep then. You stay the night. You sleep in a real bed. You dream of bells, of green cloaks, of ink that stains your hands and won't come off. You wake before dawn. You don't talk much over breakfast. When you leave the monk hands you 2 small tokens, iron coins etched with a flame and a circle. "What are these?" she asks. He smiles. "Proof that you once told the truth." She pockets hers without comment. You nod in thanks. Then you ride. East again. Always east. Because if they're still chasing you, don't stop. But you carry less now. The scroll is gone, and in its place space. Not peace, not yet, but space for it. You ride until the sun turns harsh again. The land flattens out, no more forests or shadowy curves to duck behind just open road and brittle grass, whispering along the edges. If someone's watching you now, you'll see them. If they're following, they'll see you. And that's the gamble. She doesn't say much, but you can feel it. Her gaze keeps shifting to the horizon, her hand resting near her belt, even when she's just adjusting the reins. You're doing the same. A pattern born from too many escapes and too few guarantees. Still thinking about the monastery, she asks at one point. Still thinking about the scroll? Still thinking about how weird monks smell, she mutters, and that earns a laugh from both of you. But behind it is something else tight-coiled. Tired. You stop near a low grove as dusk sets in. The trees offer little shelter but enough for a fire and the illusion of privacy. You build it small, careful. She prepares a stew of onion and salt and something root adjacent. It's not bad. While it simmers, you both sit in silence watching the flames dance. Then she says, "I think I want out." You look over. She's staring into the fire like it owes her something. "I mean it," she says. "No more scrolls, no more running, no more couriers with half-truths and smug riddles." You nod slowly. You've earned it. She glances at you. You don't answer right away. Instead, you toss a twig into the fire. Watch it curl and blacken. I used to think stopping meant losing, you say finally. Like the only way to stay sharp was to keep moving. She waits, but lately, I think maybe the sharper thing is knowing when to stop, before the blade dulls entirely. She smirks. That was poetic. I'll make it worse next time. She leans back, arms crossed behind her head. So where does someone like us go to disappear? You shrug. Somewhere boring. Somewhere with bad bread and worse storytelling. Sounds lovely. You both smile, a little crooked, a little unsure. Because wanting out and getting out are two very different things. Historians still argue whether anyone in your profession ever truly retired. Some say they became ghosts. Others say they bought taverns under false names and poured ale for soldiers who never knew who was serving them. A few legends claim they moved to the coast and raised goats. You've never been good with livestock. But maybe a coastline doesn't sound so bad. You finish the stew, clean the bowls, douse the fire until there's only steam. You take turns sleeping. She rests first, curled into her cloak face, peaceful in a way you've rarely seen. When it's your turn, you lie awake longer than necessary, listening to the wind and the occasional crack of a branch far off. You dream of silence, not the kind you've known, thick with fear and breath-holding, but true silence. A morning with no plan, a door that opens just to let the sun in. At first light, you ride again. There's a fork in the road. One way leads toward the coast, the other north toward familiar territory, familiar danger. She reins in, doesn't speak, just looks at you. You glance down the coastal path. Seagulls. You swear you can smell the salt already. You nod. She turns her horse. You follow. You don't know what's waiting there. Probably nothing. Just ocean and fog, and maybe a town that doesn't care who you used to be. Perfect. By midday, the sky turns silver. The clouds swell. You spot the shimmer of water in the distance. A wide blue sheet, endless, inviting, terrifying. The wind carries sea spray now. And something else. Peace. No, but maybe. The chance of peace. You set up camp near a cliff's edge, the sea stretching below like a promise you haven't quite earned yet. As night falls, you light no fire. You just sit, side by side, listening to the waves crash against rock and the gulls cry overhead. No one chasing, no one watching, no mission, just a horizon, and two people who might be done running. The sea doesn't change overnight, but you do. You wake to the sound of gulls bickering somewhere overhead, and the soft crunch of grass as she walks the cliff's edge. The cottage creaks in the morning breeze. The sky is silver blue, the kind of colour that suggests the world is trying its best. You pull on your boots, still damp, still stubborn, and step outside. She's already sipping something hot. It smells like boiled weeds and stubborn optimism. "You slept," she says, as if that's rare. "I'm trying out new hobbies," you reply. You sit beside her. The sea stretches below, steady and endless. For the first time in a long while, your thoughts are not planning an exit route. They're drifting. "I could live like this," you murmur. She glances sideways. "You are?" You chuckle. "Right." That explains the quiet, the mild soreness, the sudden realization that goats don't need to be bribed anymore. She smiles faintly. "We earned it." You nod. And for a moment, it feels true. You spend the day patching a window shutter, rearranging rocks along the footpath, like that might stop the wind from sneaking in. She mends a torn sleeve and curses under her breath when the thread breaks. A neighbour drops by an old man with a bad back and worse jokes. He brings you half a loaf of bread and asks if you've seen his missing cat. You haven't, but you promise to keep an eye out for anything vaguely feline and vaguely evil. She trades him a tin spoon and a salted fish. It's the most normal exchange you've had in months. That night, over a fire made from driftwood and something that smells slightly like mushrooms and definitely like rescue talk. Not about missions, not about the man in green, not about what lies buried. You talk about weather, about the shape of clouds, about how some parts of the sea foam look like broken crowns. You ever think it'll find us, she asks. What, the past? She nods. You stare into the fire. I think it always does, you say. But maybe it knocks a little softer when we stop running. Historians still argue whether those who disappeared into coastal towns were truly forgotten or merely hidden. Some say the best assassins never die, they just grow quiet. You're starting to understand what that really means. You sit with that thought until the fire burns low. Later in the dark, you hear her roll over in the next room. I think I want a garden, she says almost sleepily. You smile, flowers or food both. Ambitious, hopeful. You nod into the dark. Start with herbs, you murmur. We'll work up to turnips. She doesn't answer, but you know she's smiling too. The next morning, you find a note tucked under a rock by the path. It's not signed, just a symbol, a familiar mark, a small precise circle with a line through it. You stare at it for a long while before showing her. She reads it, says nothing, but her jaw tightens. You both know what it means. Someone knows you're here, and they want you to remember who you were. But you're not panicking, not yet, because you're not the same person you were when you ran. You're someone who can plant things now, who builds fires to warm not to signal, someone who waits. You tuck the note in a box by the hearth, right next to the tokens from the monastery. Then you step outside and start digging a garden, because whether or not the past comes knocking, you've got roots to put down. You spend the next day watching the horizon more than the garden. Something about that symbol threaded into your morning like a whisper unsettled the dirt beneath your calm. It's not fear exactly, more like a muscle memory twitching back to life. She notices. Of course she does. Want to leave, she asks over dinner, stabbing a roasted parsnip with more force than necessary. You shake your head. Want to see what happens. She arches a brow. You never used to wait for what happens. That was before I grew herbs. A long pause, then a crooked grin. You've gone soft. You smile. A little softness isn't weakness. She doesn't reply, but the next morning she's sharpening her knife again. Quietly, rhythmically. Not as a threat, just habit. Just in case. The symbol reappears, this time on the side of a clay jug left by the door. No one saw who placed it there. The innkeeper swears it wasn't one of the locals. The baker says it wasn't there an hour ago. The goats have no opinion. You and she study it. Same circle, same line. But now it's carved, pressed into the glaze before it dried. Older. Intentional. They're signalling, she mutters, or checking if we're still listening. You open the jug. It's full of wine. Sweet. Spiced. Not poisoned, probably. But the message isn't in the drink. It's in the delivery. You don't drink it. You pour it out near the garden. Let the time soak up the memory. Now that night, you sit by the fire. Neither of you says much, but in your shared silence, the truth is loud. You're not as hidden as you thought. You think it's him, she finally asks. You don't need to ask who. The man in green. The one who never seemed to bleed. The one who never liked unfinished stories. Could be. She leans back. Could also be a new player. You nod. And we're the legend they want to awaken. I liked being forgotten. So did I. The wind shifts outside, carries the scent of salt and distant fire. You don't sleep much. Neither does she. In the morning, there's a knock. You freeze mid-step. She's already by the window, peering through the crooked curtain. It's a boy, she says, maybe 10, holding something. You open the door slowly. He stands there, freckles, straw-coloured hair, nervous grip on a sealed envelope. He doesn't speak, just holds it out. You take it gently. Who gave this to you, you ask. He shrugs. Man with a limp. Said you'd know. You hand him a copper. He thanks you and runs. Inside, you break the seal. No words. Just a map. Simple. Fresh ink. A place you recognize from the old days. A crossroads near a ruined watchtower. Used to be a rendezvous point for contracts passed hand to hand. At the corner of the map, a symbol. Same circle. Same line. Below it, a single phrase. End it properly. She reads it over your shoulder. Well, she says, that's subtle. You fold the map. Sit down. Neither of you speaks for a long while. Then she asks, so, what do we do? You look around, at the garden, at the tools, at the quiet life you've managed to build splinter by splinter, and then you say it. We go. She nods. No hesitation. You sure? No, you admit. But I'd rather choose the end than wait for it to choose me. Historians still argue whether peace is something earned or simply rented between moments of chaos. You don't know which this is, but you know it won't last. You pack lightly. No scrolls this time, no royal secrets, just blades, bread and memory. As the two of you mount up, the village fades behind you, not because you're leaving forever, just because forever is a luxury you stop believing in. You ride east, back into the part of the world that remembers what your footsteps used to mean. You plant time first, not because it's useful though it is, but because the name makes her laugh every time you say it out loud like some old apothecary with a flair for dramatic seasoning. You dig slowly, carefully, the way you were never trained to do. Every movement deliberate, every stone lifted like it might hold a memory underneath. The soil is reluctant at first, stubborn. But so are you. She's nearby building a fence out of driftwood and unearned optimism. One of the boards is already crooked and another has a knot in it shaped exactly like a disappointed owl. You don't mention it. Some things aren't meant to be perfect. The garden grows by inches, and you do too. A week passes. No more strange symbols, no letters, no riders. Just you, her, the sea, and a slowly growing patch of green that smells like potential. One morning, the wind carries the scent of lemon balm from a neighbour's yard, and you trade a sharpened blade for a bundle. Not because you need it, because you can. At night, you sit on the porch. She reads something aloud from a scrap of a book you found behind the hearth. The ink's faded, but the words are ridiculous enough to survive. You laugh, and it doesn't feel dangerous. It just feels real. One day, you make it to the market. You walk among strangers. Nobody flinches, nobody whispers. One merchant tries to overcharge you for a dented pot, and you haggle like someone who hasn't used a code word in 6 months. She buys soap that smells like citrus and victory, and you carry it home like treasure. You hang the tokens from the monastery above the fireplace. You never explain them to anyone, not because you're hiding, because some truths belong only to those who carried them. Historians still argue whether peace was ever an option for lives built in the shadows, whether those who walk the blade's edge could ever truly step off it. You don't argue anymore. You just live. The scroll is gone, the map is buried somewhere behind the time, and the wind doesn't call your name anymore, just your new one, the one you chose, the one she uses now, without hesitation, even when she's annoyed and muttering about weeds that refuse to listen to instruction. You spend a rainy afternoon teaching a neighbour's child how to tie knots. She tells him stories, not yours, ones with dragons, with heroes, with endings that make sense. He eats them up like sugar. When he leaves, she leans back, eyes half-lidded. We're still dangerous, you know, she says. You nod, but not to them. That night, there's music in the village. You don't dance. She makes you anyway. You're bad at it. But she laughs so hard that the baker offers you both free bread out of sheer pity. The sea doesn't change, but you do. And when the past finally catches up again, as it always does, it doesn't come in fire or steel. It comes in a knock on the door. Polite, gentle. A young courier with a letter. She reads it first. You watch her face. She doesn't flinch. Someone remembers, she says. Good you reply. So do we. But you don't go. You fold the letter. Place it in the same box with the old tokens. Then you go back to planting. The beans are stubborn this season. So are you. So is she. It's going to be a good year. But now the fire fades. You've walked a long road tonight, from cities shrouded in fog to quiet cliffs overlooking an endless sea. You've crouched in shadows, you've run with secrets, and you've sat beside someone who knew your silence like a second name. You've buried truths, you've kept them safe, you've chosen peace. And in doing so, you've reminded the world that even the sharpest blade dulls eventually not from failure, but from letting go. You rest now, not because the story is over, but because it's yours to pause. You lie in the soft dark, the ocean murmuring through your window, the scent of lemon balm on the air. The garden waits for tomorrow. The wind curls through the herbs like it knows their names. The sky is heavy with stars that blink down like tired gods. And you're exactly where you're meant to be. You breathe, slow, steady, safe. Let it all go, the noise, the chase, the names that were once yours. They don't matter here. Only this moment does. The warmth in your bones, the weight of the blanket, the quiet promise of morning. So close your eyes now. You've earned this silence, and it will hold you until the sun finds you again. End of script. Sweet dreams.